This is a CBS News special report remembering Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. I'm Gail King here in New York, and we're going to take you live right away to Windsor Castle, just outside London, where the funeral procession for Prince Philip is about to begin. Queen Elizabeth's husband of 73 years died last Friday, just 2 months before his 100th birthday. He would have turned 100 years old, by the way, on June 10th. You can see already a large number of marchers, mostly service members, have gathered, and in just a few minutes, they will lead Prince Philip's coffin in a roughly 8-minute procession to St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle. The Duke was a ranger of Windsor Estate, and at his request, the coffin will be carried on a specially modified Land Rover that he helped design. Think about that for a second, designing your own final vehicle that will take you to your resting place. Members of the royal family will walk in the procession, but not the Queen. She will be driven to the chapel today. Prince Charles and Princess Anne, his sister, will walk behind their father. The Queen's other sons, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, will be next in line. Then we'll see Prince William and Prince Harry. Their cousin Peter Phillips will be walking between them. The Queen's oldest grandson, William and Harry, there's no secret about this, have had a strained relationship, you could say, since Harry stepped away from his royal duties. Princess Anne's husband, that's Vice Admiral Timothy Lawrence, the Earl of Snowdon, and the Queen's nephew will also march. The entire procession and the funeral will take place on the grounds of Windsor Castle, and it will be small in large part because of COVID, but also because that's exactly the way Philip wanted it. People who know him say that was the kind of man he was. Just 30 mourners from the immediate family will attend, plus a few relatives from the Duke's extended family. Longtime royal watcher Tina Brown is here in the studio. You made it just in time. She literally just sat down 2 seconds ago. Good to see you, Tina Brown. She's the author of the Diana Chronicles. But first, let's go to Windsor Castle. Our Charlie D'Agata is outside. Charlie, we will soon see Queen Elizabeth, who has called Philip my strength and my stay. That she's largely been out of sight since his death. I keep thinking about this woman who's losing her partner of 73 years.
Yes, well, Gail, the Queen has been performing some limited royal duties, but certainly for the first time we'll be seeing her in public. And it's a sad day for the Queen, as you pointed out. It's a solemn day for the family. For all the world's attention, we have been reminded by the palace that this is a family funeral. Now, just a few moments ago, we saw the first pictures of other royals, the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, Camilla, of course, the wife of Prince Charles, cousins and grandchildren, who are going to make that very limited congregation of only 30 people in keeping with the COVID limitations here. The choir itself only consists of 4 people. Everyone in the chapel, everyone else will be masked in keeping with the current COVID restrictions. No members of the royal family will be holding a reading or making an address or a eulogy. Now, that is common practice in royal funerals. But in a way, as you noted, it's what Prince Philip has always wanted, a relatively small affair, and one he has planned himself meticulously, approved by the Queen, planned with military precision, with more than 700 armed forces personnel. You saw some of them there, taking part in one way or the other. None of the family will be in uniform, which that is a departure from standard practice on these occasions. And Prince Harry will be surrounded by the household cavalry, which, of course, he used to serve with. He and his grandfather share this common bond in their pride, their active duty in the military. Prince Philip, of course, served in the Royal Navy for 13 years. A decorated World War II hero, he remained a Navy man for life and in death. So this event will include piping the side. That's when a high-ranking officer boards a warship. A bugler will blow a naval call to action stations. That's toward the end of the journey. And, of course, the last post. The procession is moments away, expected to take 8 minutes, as you noticed, within the grounds of Windsor Castle, with guns fired off every minute until they arrive and salute. Gail?
Charlie, it is such a beautiful day in the UK today. I'm so glad that the sun is shining as we all say farewell to Prince Philip. But I know we keep saying this is a scaled-back funeral, and it is, but it still seems very large, very official, and very grand.
It does seem very grand. It's part to do with the involvement of those armed forces. Remember, this funeral was supposed to take place with about 800 people involved pre-COVID. Prince Philip never wanted anything like that. He didn't want to lie in state. He didn't want a state funeral. What he did want, and that's what's represented here at Windsor Castle, is that large military presence. And you're going to see it not just now in what you've seen in the preparations as this procession gets underway, but what you will see as it gets underway and as the funeral itself begins, because they're going to be everywhere. And it just shows you how important the military has played for a role for him personally. He said he wanted to be a career naval man. He essentially was so, in addition to consort to the Queen. But that's why you're seeing what you're seeing and why you will see it for the rest of this service.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Tina, we all know that today it really is about burying the Duke of Edinburgh, but a lot is going to be paid to his legacy. What can you tell us about the legacy of Prince Philip?
His legacy is multiple. Obviously, his role was to serve the Queen, and he did that with an extraordinary, devoted, unfailing loyalty for 68 years, which was remarkable. He did over 700 royal engagements a year, and he executed it with a staff of about 5 because he was such an extraordinarily efficient. I mean, his office ran more efficiently than anybody else's at the palace, with that kind of naval, stripped-down approach to life. But he had developed an enormous amount of his own private sort of achievements. Not private, they were public achievements. He started, for instance, the Duke of Edinburgh Gold Award, which was an award for young people for community service, outward bound expeditions, self-reliance. And it turned out to be such an amazing success. It's now in 140 countries and has really been a mega presence in the lives of a great many young people. He was very much on the cutting edge in terms of conservation, and that's where Prince Charles gets his passion.
And a lot of people too, though, Tina, will be thinking about the Queen. I keep thinking about losing your partner of 73 years. We showed a picture earlier today that the palace released this morning. They said that it was one of her favorite pictures of the two of them. They're laying on a grassy knoll. They look very relaxed. And she told her dad back in the day that this was the only man that she thought she could ever love. She was 21. He was 26. The love between the two of them, too, is something that I think many are fascinated with.
There's no doubt that Prince Philip was the love of her life. And, he loved her deeply, too. In fact, he wrote a letter to her at the time of their engagement where he said he fell in love with her unreservedly, which I thought was a beautiful way to put it. But his own life, his own childhood, had been so chaotic, actually. His father was tossed into exile. His father was the brother of the King of Greece, and he was sent into exile. And Prince Philip really bounced around Europe, being raised by relatives. He never had a place to go. He used to sign the guest book of houses of no fixed abode. So when he met the Queen, not only did he fall in love with this sparkling, adorable young woman, but she also sort of represented an emotional safe place for him. I think there's a little bit of a comparison between how William feels about Kate, who's this very calming force in his life. The Queen was a very calming force in Philip's life and provided him with that safe space because it was forever, and he had finally got a role. People forget that, being an exiled European prince bouncing around the world with no money, which he had, suddenly, he had this woman who would always be his strength and stay, if you like. And she was.
And this, of course, is at the end of the day, a family that is grieving, a family that is laying the patriarch to rest. But it's also coming with family drama. Everyone's watching to see what's going to happen with William and Harry. Harry has been there and has been in quarantine, it's my understanding, and just was released from quarantine yesterday. But a lot is being made of them walking behind the casket today, and that they're not standing shoulder to shoulder. They didn't stand shoulder to shoulder when their mother was buried. And this was by the Queen's design, where she said she wanted the order to go. What do you make of that? Because it seems like there's a lot of focus on what's going to happen between the two brothers.
Well, I do think that the Queen decided that she didn't want any drama. And what she most didn't want was the focus on that. And I think everybody knew that if the two brothers stood together, there'd be wild conjecture. Have they made up? Are they, how are they looking at each other? What's the body language? And I think it was a very smart decision to just say, enough of that. We're going to put Phillips in between them, and he, by the way, is so close to them and has always been an enormously warm and
their cousin
brother. Yeah, they're
is very close to them.
Very close to them. Very, very close to them. I think it was a clever typically diplomatic suggestion of the Queen, which is to like just take the focus off and put him in the middle. And I think it's a smart idea.
Are we reading too much into what to look at the body language, since they didn't walk shoulder to shoulder behind their mother's casket either?
Well, I think obviously there has been a great deal of tension between them. Whether
That's no secret, yes.
Yeah. Whether that will get resolved, you know, in this atmosphere of the funeral, I don't know. Sometimes funerals are not particularly bonding places, by the way. There's a great assumption that a funeral is where everybody makes up. Not necessarily. A lot of funerals are where everybody speaks the truth and it all gets a little difficult. So who knows how that will go. It's a pity because of the COVID that they've not really been able to meet until this moment.
Tina, we're seeing the coffin for the very first time. It is being carried now by military pallbearers. And now the coffin is soon going to be placed onto the hearse, which, as we've been talking about really for the last couple of days, is a custom Land Rover that was designed in part by Philip himself. It's painted military green on his orders. They keep saying, Tina, that Prince Philip also wrote a lot of the ceremony, that he had very specific instructions on how he wanted this day to go. Does that surprise you?
No, he had thought about this a lot, and he didn't want, actually, all the fuss of turning 100. People thought, oh, Philip wants to get to 100. I don't think so. I think he decided to slide out before that happened.
Do you?
I do. I think he didn't want all of that jamboree around him. He really didn't. He was a very simple, direct, military, precise kind of a man. This is exactly what he would have wanted, as a matter of fact. It didn't have all the military size, etc., in the congregation he would have liked. But I think he would approve of this service, actually. I mean, he did oversee every detail of his funeral. The designing of this special hearse Land Rover was particularly Philip. You know, he was very obsessed with tech and all things mechanical. He loved the Land Rover. It represented his freedom driving around the estates, which he did until he was 96. You know, he wanted it to go this exact way, and this Land Rover has been his project for the last few years.
Yeah, and there you see his military cap on top of his hearse, on top of his coffin, rather.